What I desire to do is use and utilize this privilege in a way that makes it not a privilege, meaning to give support and bring awareness to the plight.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
Hello, deep divers. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Deep Dive podcast. My name is Adam Roa, and today I want to talk about white privilege. And this is something that I have been confronted with quite powerfully over the last week or more. And similarly, I imagine that most of the white community is facing off with it. At least it's being brought into their awareness, and rightfully so. I think that even within myself, my white privilege is not something that I think about unless it is brought to my attention, unless there is a conversation about it that is happening. And so within this conversation, I have done a lot of introspection into it and paying attention to the ways in which it's shown up in my life and asking something that is what I hope is actually the goal here. Because to me, the goal is not for you to blame yourself for having white privilege. It's not to feel bad. It's not to shame yourself or feel guilty. That would be like winning the lottery and then just feeling guilt about it and doing nothing with it, taking all that money and just letting it sit there and saying, I don't want anyone to know that I won the lottery. I don't want to use it. I feel bad about it, and just holding on to it. Because here's the thing, the acknowledgement of it, the acceptance of it, is a first step into what I believe to be the more important aspect, which is how to use it, how to utilize it in a way that helps normalize it for everyone. The only reason it's even a privilege is because not everyone has it. So if we begin to see the white privilege that we have and use it in ways to help lift up the people who don't have it, then it doesn't actually exist any longer as privilege. It becomes a foundational human right. It becomes a normalized part of being human. Things like not having to worry about being discriminated against for the color of your skin. And if you're unsure about white privilege and what that might mean, examples are when I have been pulled over by a cop. If a cop just pulls up behind me while I'm driving, I tense up. I can feel myself be really hyper aware of my speed and making sure I signal and just don't do anything wrong. Now, I can't even imagine if within that same response was the fear that if I got pulled over, this cop might kill me because of the color of my skin, or make me get out of the car and treat me poorly and search me unfairly. I've never gone into a store and worried that I'm going to be profiled for being someone that's going to steal something and being followed around the store. I've never had to worry that with any of the women that I've dated, that their parents would say, you cannot date that person. You have to choose between him or us because of the color of my skin. When I apply for jobs, I feel I will always have an opportunity to get it. I don't fear that I will be denied a loan or a job because of the color of my skin. This means that I've had an opportunity to walk through the world without a certain level of fight or flight, without a certain level of fear that most, if not all, of the Black community feels on a daily basis. And if you see things like Breonna Taylor, where they burst into her home and shoot her dead, you realize it's not just when they leave their house. This is omnipresent. And this comes back to what my privilege has allowed me to do is hit a point of self-realization, hit a point of self-actualization from doing a lot of personal development work to develop skill sets to be with my emotions and to hold space for other people's emotions and to continue to understand how my belief systems are forming, how I can shift them, how I can help support others to do the same thing. And this comes back to basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For those of you who are not familiar, Maslow's hierarchy of needs speaks to a pyramid moving from bottom to top, speaking about we really can't move up the levels until we've satisfied the lower level. So the first level is our physiological needs, things just like food and water and sleep. Right? Physiological, what we need in our biology. Once we've satisfied those things, okay, we move up into safety and security. And then when we move up from that, we start to go into our psychological needs, the feeling of acceptance and community. We go above that, we have our feelings of accomplishment, like we matter. And then at the top, we have self-actualization. And self-actualization includes creative expression. I would say personal development fits in there, the exploration of our own consciousness. The who are we on a soul level. And so understand that when you've satisfied the physiological needs of food and water, you then look for safety. Without basic food and water figured out, safety becomes a lesser concern. It's just like, how do I find food? How do I get water? I will do anything to satisfy that. And then we go to safety. And if we don't feel safe, then feeling part of a community is of a lesser concern. I'm going to look out for me on a safety level first. I was the victim of sexual abuse when I was very young. When I was growing up, I was disciplined regularly with belts and wooden objects. And so between those two things, I walked through the world with some level of fight or flight, feeling like I wasn't physically safe, that something bad could happen to me at any moment. And this belief system had me consistently looking at worst case scenarios. I was afraid. I remember I would walk into restaurants and think about, okay, well, like if someone entered with a gun, where are the exits? What would I do? And I would have those sorts of thoughts. When I was younger, I thought they were great thoughts. I was like, I'm just preparing for the worst case scenario. I compared myself like, I was like Jason Bourne, just like figuring out what could go wrong and being prepared. As I got older and started doing more personal development work, I realized that those thoughts, the way I was perceiving the world, was shaped by deep levels of fear in my body. Deep beliefs, truly, that something bad could happen to me at any moment, even around the people I trust. And through the personal development work, started to gain an understanding of how deeply impacted I was by these events, and how it was shaping my ability to be present. It was shaping my ability to find joy. It was shaping my ability to feel safe here on earth. And the thing is, what allowed me to do that personal development work and go down that path was my privilege. My white privilege has provided me an opportunity to be a part of a system that works for me, but not for everyone. And there's a responsibility that I feel, and I don't use that word very often, but I definitely feel it right now, where I know I can only play the cards of the hand that I've been dealt. To feel like I should blame myself for the privilege that I've had the blessing to receive feels misaligned, because it feels like I then lack gratitude for a gift that I've been given. Is it fair? No, not at all. In no way is it fair. I don't believe that that the fact that white privilege exists is fair by any stretch of the imagination. However, what I do believe is that if I blame myself, if I shame myself, if I refuse to accept it, if I don't want to accept it, I feel like I'm spitting in the face of all the people who don't have that privilege. What I desire to do is use and utilize this privilege in a way that makes it not a privilege, meaning to give support and bring awareness to the plight, and to help construct new systems and ideas so that the privilege becomes normalized. It's only privilege because not everyone has it. But if we can normalize it, it becomes basic foundational human rights. And so I then take the next step and look at, what have I learned from having the privilege to do the personal development work? What have I actually learned about that? I've learned that in the process of emotional healing, in the process of that, what rises to the surface is worthy of being felt. It's just the truth of what is. When I was doing my healing work and forgiveness work around the man who molested me, there were so many layers over a long period of time of what came up. There was anger. There was sadness. There was compassion. There was frustration. There was hopelessness. And during that process, I learned through need how to be with each one of those emotions in healthy ways that weren't causing harm to other people. I didn't take my anger out into the world and start fights with people. I learned how to express it through primal screaming, through dance, through physical exertion. When I felt deep sadness, I learned how to channel that into art. I learned how to write poetry about it. I learned how to titrate my system with the PTSD based on Peter Levine's work. And I learned the importance of the physical body. I learned how important it was for me to detox my body, to adjust my diets, and to supplement. Again, things that my privilege allowed for. whether that's financially because I had the money to do it, whether that's from the education that I had the ability to surround myself with, whether it is the community that also had that privilege and therefore was able to support me in that. And so what all of those tools, what all of that skill set has provided me with is an ability to be with my emotional experience during this time and to hold space for the emotional experience of people all around me and on social media at a level that I wasn't able to do before I went on the personal development journey. And in that, I am able to not get completely swept up and overridden by my emotional experience. I've learned to sit in hours of meditation and be the observer of what's coming up, so to allow it to move through and to continue to keep my vibration and my focus on a solution. Where do I want to go? I desire for this sadness to be felt, to be expressed as I look to release any stored trauma in my body. That process is something that I desire to support people with. And then personally, during this time, I get to apply all of those skills, all of those tools that I've learned. I get to apply them to the situation right now so that I can scale out and keep my focus towards a vision for a world of equality, for a system that works for everyone, not just works, but is prosperous for everyone. Because that's the personal development journey. It's to go inward. It's to look at it, to be with it, because it all needs to be felt. You be with that. You learn how to do that, and you consistently go inward while maintaining that 30,000 foot eagle eye soul level view of being the observer of the experience, so that you can not get sucked into that experience, but allow it to pass through like passing clouds in the sky, and remain focused on, okay, I desire more joy in my life. I desire for self-actualization. I desire more expression of my creativity. You've probably heard me say this before, but creativity is the purest expression of your soul. And it's so powerful for me that we have a society that is so deeply impacted by the creativity of the Black community, the art, hip hop culture, the language, the just dance, so much impacted by Black culture. Which means that despite having to oftentimes worry about where they're getting their food and water from, despite not feeling safe, despite feeling like the greater community at large, that they're not a part of it or they're not welcome in it, they found ways of self-actualization. They found ways to do that to a level that has transformed the planet. And I think about how powerful that is, and what could be possible if they were given the safety, if they did have the base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they had the base level of that stuff taken care of, because the rest of us see our privilege and we say it's time to support in making sure that that is foundational for everyone. And so for anyone who has had the privilege of doing personal development work, for anyone who has had that privilege of soul searching and being supported and developing skills and tool sets to allow you to be with your emotions, to know how to do that self-inquiry and how to hold space for others in their emotional experience. For those of you who have had that privilege, what I implore of you is to apply that right now, and don't lose sight of the 30,000 foot view of what's going on. Be able to scale out. Be able to say, wow, okay, collectively, just like on the individual level, because as within, so without, we're all fractals here. Collectively, the emotions are rising to the surface. So what do I know from personal development? I know I get to help create a safe space for those emotions. I get to do my absolute best to process my emotions so that I don't take it personally. And I get to hold the eagle eye view of, okay, those emotions also get to be processed in a healthy, effective way. How can I help steer things in that direction? Okay, I also know that when in a heightened emotional state, the blood flow leaves the prefrontal cortex. It goes into things like the amygdala and the limbic brain. It takes away some of the rational thought that can happen when in heightened emotional states. I know that. That's biological. I've learned that. Again, okay, awesome. What does that mean? That means when in a heightened emotional state, can I through healthy practices, can I continue to hold rational thought? As rational thought is a necessary component for the development of long-term solutions. And this is not an or conversation. This is an and conversation. When I'm in my process of anger, it's not like, okay, well, I'm only going to give a certain amount of anger so that I can, be rational. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to rationally create the container for me to do that in, and I'm going to unload, and I'm going to unleash within that safe container. And then after that emotion has moved through, I'm going to continue to say, okay, what's next? What's needed now? Let me sit. Let me contemplate. And right now, we see the heightened emotion that is getting co-opted. We've seen it. It's been done. This is not theoretical. We've seen it done with the Black Lives Matter movement in the past. We've seen it done with the Me Too movement. We've seen it done with political movements. We've seen it done with gun control. We've seen it done as far back. This is from the Art of War book, from tactics that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old, to redirect emotions. Redirect emotions to divert attention from the root causes and keep people focused on symptoms in order for the hamster wheel to continue. This is happening. And if you think that you are not susceptible to it, something that has been happening because of a deep understanding of human behavior done by people with incredible amounts of resources, with deep access to media, not just mainstream media, by the way, but social media, networks, platforms, celebrities, etc. If you think that you are not susceptible to it, you're the most susceptible to it. I know that I'm susceptible to it, but my privilege has allowed me to say, okay, while in a heightened emotional state, I'm even more susceptible to it. So let me pay attention to what the narratives are. Let me pay attention to what's happening. Let me keep that eagle eye view while not ignoring the reality of what's going on, while not refusing to hold space and work to not take it personally. This is what my privilege has allowed me to become. And so I will be that person for myself, and as a huge freaking thank you to the Black community that has literally through blood, sweat, and tears built a country that I was lucky enough to receive privilege from. And so I feel my role in this is to apply that level of thinking and that level of consciousness that I have been able to cultivate and develop and speak to it. Even if it's uncomfortable for me, even if, as I have, if I upset people. There have been recent posts that I've shared that have upset people, members of the Black community and the white community, because I'm speaking not just to the pain and the anger and the emotions. I'm not just speaking to that, because it would be very easy for me to do that. To just like post the thing on social media that says I'm in solidarity, and just to post the stuff on social media that says racism's wrong, and just to post the trendy thing to do. It would be easy to stop there. But I am lucky enough to have been able to see beyond just the emotions themselves and want to hold the vision for where are we going. Remember that even like Einstein, base level, said we cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. And therefore, if there is a separatism, if there is a level of hierarchy that created the system to begin with, then if I am entering into the conversation being upset at that system and creating a separatism by saying, you're wrong, I'm right, you're the bad, I'm the good, whoever the fingers are pointed to, if it's continually from a place of separatism, whatever solutions are arrived at will just be band-aids on the symptom and not actually addressing the root cause. And by the way, there are people, there are organizations that want that to happen. Because if we put a band-aid on the wound and say, oh, here's a way to we could just like, let's just do this. They give an inch, but that inch, while it may placate some of the emotional responses, that inch becomes just another way to keep the system going, because the inch doesn't change the system. The inch is a vanity metric within the system. And yet, basic biological human behavior says that if we can just make everyone who's upset feel like they accomplished something, even if it's a little bit, that human desire to just end that discomfort will say, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. I feel so much better. I can feel like I accomplished something, which is happening on the micro level with all the people who posted those black squares of solidarity on their social media. And then if you look at a lot of those accounts, if you really went in and looked at them, so many of them posted that and didn't post anything else. It's a way of saying, oh, thank God I contributed, I did something. but it wasn't change. Awareness gives us choice. New choices lead to change. Helping to spread awareness, great, I'm all for it. But helping to spread awareness in and of itself is not change. And those of us who have had the opportunity, the privilege of doing the personal development work, we know this, we've learned this, we understand how it works within ourselves because we've been given the opportunity to do it. And therefore, we get to recognize the fractal that is the collective and hold space and provide tools and skill sets and be vocal about how transformation can occur. And yes, it's not comfortable to be someone in this white skin suit that's saying that, because I know what is said about you don't understand. You don't get it. It's not your place to tell the Black community how the healing happens. But here's the thing, and a message to everyone. Most of the people that have gone into the personal development realms at a very deep level have been white or white passing, because that's what the privilege has allowed for. And so deep transformational work, which I believe is the foundation and cornerstone of what's going to shift the collective on the planet, because again, we're just mirroring each other, requires people who have done that deep transformational work to take what they've learned and help apply it to the system. And that means that it's going to need to be primarily white people who've had that privilege who get vocal about this. And it may mean backlash of you don't get it. Okay, I'm willing to take those arrows if they come. That's what, when we say, as a white person, what are you willing to sacrifice? How uncomfortable are you willing to get to stand for this? That is an example. If you have spent years of your life learning how transformation happens, now is not the time for you to get quiet about how that transformation can happen in the collective. Now's not the time. By the way, again, this is not an or conversation. It's also the time for us to be in the conversations with the Black community and find out what sort of transformation they actually want to see, what sort of pain they're actually dealing with and experiencing, so that we can have a better picture of what's really going on. Just like any great coach, the first thing you do is you ask questions. You get an understanding. You don't just go in and say, oh, I know what's wrong, before you ask the questions. So this is an and conversation. But this is not the time for those who really know personal development work to be quiet. So be willing to get uncomfortable. This is what that works for. Because when people may have backlash towards you, when they might get upset, amazing. You have the tools that you've had the privilege to develop to be with that. And you have the tools to continue holding space so that whoever it is that is triggered by it, you don't take it as personally, and you can hold compassion and love in your heart. We get to show up in that way. Warriors for love. I'm grateful for the privilege that I've received. And I'm committed to using it to help the best I possibly can. And for those of you who have been given the same privileges that I have, I encourage you to do the same. Now's the time to get out that toolkit. Now's the time to go and do the work, apply it on a collective level. That's how I choose to show up. That's how I hope that you choose to show up. If this has resonated with you, if this is something that you feel is important for others to hear, I ask that you share it out, because one of the most powerful things that we do have is social media. We have the ability to spread these messages far and wide. We have when we find people who may speak it in a way that we didn't think to speak it, or feel like we can't speak it, it doesn't have to be our words. We can help share the words of others, the Black community, the white community, and the spiritual community. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being in the inquiry yourself. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.